Stepanovich. Let me start first with you, Mr. Dillingham. You mentioned, as I did in my opening statement, TSA identified a potential terrorist threat through the use of these UAV systems. You know, the FARC in Colombia, and they talked about Hezbollah. Then, of course, their concerns really came to fruition last September when it was reported by the Associated Press, man to blow up Pentagon and U.S. Capitol is arrested, and this was a drone he was going to use to do that.
Yes, sir.
The United States Capitol and the Pentagon, the very targets of 9/11. And yet the Department, and as you recommended through the GAO, the Department has a role in this to provide a security assessment and a national policy. The Department apparently disagrees with you and frankly disagrees with me as the chairman and has refused to provide testimony before this committee here today. And I find that reprehensible. I believe the Department should come before this committee to answer why they believe they should not have a role in this, when we had a direct threat to the Capitol of the United States and the Pentagon, and yet they don't see it as a role of the Department of Homeland Security to come up with a policy and a security assessment to monitor the threat that these domestic drones can pose to the American people. Do you have any idea what their rationale is?
Mr. Chairman, we specifically followed up in preparation for this hearing, but before that, the GAO has a policy of once we issue a recommendation that we do periodic follow-ups, because those agencies are not only responsible for reporting to the GAO, but they also report to the Congress. So we followed up most recently and asked the TSA again about their position, had their position changed. And they indicated that their position had not changed, but their added comments were that they were taking actions that they thought were sufficient to address the issue. And as you know, one of the central tenets of TSA security are risk analysis or risk assessment, so that they know where they would best deploy their resources. So we asked for some evidence of risk assessment that was done with regard to UAVs or UAS. We were not able to obtain that from DHS, so that we still think that our recommendation is valid and needed to be addressed. For balance, though, let me say that DHS is participating with the Joint Planning and Development Office as part of the cross-government-wide development for plans. But in terms of exactly what the nature and scope of that participation is beyond being members of that particular group, we were not able to ascertain at this point, but we continue to work that issue for our full report.
Well, I can't ascertain it either, you know. And if they won't come before this committee to describe what they're doing, how can we possibly know what they're doing? And you said they've taken certain precautions, yet they will not come before this committee to tell us what precautions they're taking.
Yes, sir.
And they have defied not only you, but I think the will of this committee and the will of the American people. And I'm not pleased about that, obviously. Let me go to Mr. Chief McDaniel. You actually receive Homeland Security grants to purchase these drones. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
But yet they have no role.
No, sir.
Now, I hope you're saying that facetiously. You said that you believe that there needs to be federal oversight by the Department of Homeland Security. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. There is a difference between the aviation aspect of it that certainly the FAA is entitled to as experts in that environment, but they do not have the understanding, the expertise that I believe an agency such as the DHS would have in understanding the operational roles and missions that, in our case, law enforcement would have and the needs that we would have.
And I tend to agree with you. I think FAA provides the safety of the routes, but not security. Tell me just very briefly the legitimate law enforcement purposes. I do believe there's a legitimate law enforcement purpose for the use of these domestically. Can you expand on that?
Well, we have periodic needs for our SWAT team to be called out and respond to critical incidents involving barricaded suspects, high-risk warrants, and this is an asset that provides that incident commander with the situational awareness to see everything that's going on within that incident so that he can better manage that incident and bring it to a safe conclusion.
And I agree. I think it should be limited to a specific incident or mission within a legitimate law enforcement purpose. I think what most American people do not want to see are thousands of these drones being eyes of the skies, sort of spying on the American people. And I think that takes me to you, Ms. Stepanovich. When it comes to the privacy issues, which I think are a legitimate concern, I think if these are, people can accept if this is being used for a manhunt, as we use, law enforcement helicopters are used in the sky for various legitimate law enforcement purposes. What they don't want to see is sort of spying without any mission involved in the plan. And so there is no policy. The Department of Homeland Security has an Office of Privacy. Don't you believe that they should be involved in working with people like yourself and people like the sheriff and people like GAO to develop a privacy policy?
EPIC does believe that. In fact, we believe that a great first step, DHS has the most robust privacy office in the federal government, and they have not even done a privacy impact assessment on their own drone program, which is also one of the most robust and one of the most, definitely the most well-publicized program in the federal government. So they have not even gone in to determine what impact these drones will have on the American public as they use them, and we think that would be a great first step. And then after that has been completed, to really go in and to monitor these and determine what they can be used for and what they cannot be used for.
Let me just conclude by saying that while y'all may not all agree on all the issues, one thing you do agree on is that DHS does have a role here to play, whether it's providing a security analysis, working with state and locals, and with privacy. And I hope this hearing gets their attention. I hope your testimony gets their attention to step forward, step up to the plate, and do something about this. With that,